I am so excited to announce that in the month of October, I am going to be doing a quilt along. So I'm going to be working through an entire quilt top from beginning to end and showing you all the steps along the way. So I'm going to show you the quilt top I'm going to be sewing right up here so you can kind of get an idea of the layout and see if it's something that you would like making. It is a very scrappy quilt, and while it looks a little bit tricky, don't worry, it is a very beginner friendly project. So this quilt is going to be based around just two quilt blocks. The first quilt block is a 9-patch, and I absolutely love sewing 9-patch quilts because they come together really easy and there's a ton of different variations out there on them. So with this one little block, you can make so many different quilt tops by just switching around your fabric layouts or different things like that. So that is one of the blocks in the quilt, and the other is a snowball block. And both of these blocks are very beginner friendly, like I said, and come together really easy. So you can see this block just starts off with a square background, and then there are little kind of ears, I like to call them, on the end that are sewn on with a pattern to kind of make it look a little bit different. So those are the two blocks that we'll be sewing. Now this quilt is going to be about 54 inches by 66 inches. So a nice throw size quilt. And I feel like that's a perfect size quilt for beginners and on up because it's easy to quilt that size on a domestic machine if that is what you have. I mean, you can also send it out to get long armed if you want, or if you have a long arm, use that of course. But I feel like for beginners, if you're just starting out and just have a domestic sewing machine, this is a size that is still manageable, I feel like, to quilt on a domestic machine, which is what I'm going to be doing further along in the quilt along. So I will be showing you how I'm going to quilt this quilt as well if you want to do that. Now for this quilt, I am actually going to be using a jelly roll. Now this is a little bit tricky because a jelly roll that I purchased has 40 strips in it. However, for this quilt, you will want 43 strips. So what I'm doing is grabbing a few extra jelly roll strips from my stash that I have. So I grabbed a couple of these just to add in with it. Now, because this quilt is going to be very scrappy, I think it'll work just fine. The colors kind of meld with what I am using. Now, another option is if you don't want it to look too scrappy, what you'll need for the patterned squares is about 3 yards of pattern fabric. So if you want to do one color for each yard, you could do that, or however you want to plan it out. If you don't have jelly rolls and you have a ton of fat quarters, you could do that as well. Maybe 12 to 15 to get a nice variety if you want it to look scrappy. That will work as well. Now for the background on the snowball block, I'm just going to go with white. I always buy a lot of white fabric when it goes on sale, so I have a ton. You'll need 2 yards of background. You don't have to use white, just something that will stand out from whatever colors you're using on your quilt and just show that variation there. You could still go and do a tone on tone, a light gray that's tone on tone, whatever you want to do. If you like darker fabrics, you could go with something really dark that pops separate from the fabrics you're using. There's a lot of different ways you could go with this quilt. You don't have to stick just with how I'm doing it. Now, when will these videos start posting? So I'm kind of letting you know about it a little bit early so you can gather fabric if you want to sew along. So these videos are going to start posting in October. The first one will go up on October 6th, and that will be where I walk through the 9-patch block. So I'll show you how I like to put them together, kind of talk about pressing and sewing and all of that. Then the following week will be all about the snowball block, so I'll be showing you how to put that one together, and I'll be letting you know how many of each you need to make. Then in week 3, we'll be putting everything together. So I'll talk about sewing rows together and then building the rows together into a quilt, walk you through how I like to press the rows to make sure everything lines up nice and all of that. And then in the final week, I'll show you how I like to baste a quilt and also I'll walk you through a little bit about how I like to quilt quilts, especially on a domestic machine, and just keeping it easy, especially if you are newer to quilting. So that is how the plan is throughout October. Now, if you would like and aren't already in my Facebook group, you could go ahead and join that. It's down in the description of this video. I'll put a link to it. And in that group, I'll be sharing little tips in there. And also, if you would like, you could show what fabrics you are using. I love to see how everyone's quilts are coming together. So you could share photos of the fabrics you've gathered, and while we wait for the videos to post, you could ask any questions. You know, if you are not sure if you think the colors will go together and you want some advice, you could ask in there. And then show progress. Show us your blocks as they come together. I think that'll be a lot of fun, and we can all encourage each other. If you have any questions, you could come in there and ask as well. All right, so I think I've given everything about the quilt along. I'm so excited about it. Let me know in the comments if you are going to join in. I would love to have you. So thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video in October. Bye.